Hi, guys. It's so good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. I'll have you guys introduce yourself and then I'll share who I am and we can talk about the starting of CCF.
Uh, I'm Shane Garner. This is my wife, Nikel. We live in Wisconsin, and we're both born and raised in Meading, so Wisconsin, and she's from Colorado.
Devon, Wijesinghe, born and raised and five generations. And that's not a fake background. That's my actual view. I just did this to make the Wisconsin people jealous. Uh, but great to be with you.
Uh-huh. So Shane, I'll have you go ahead and talk about the pre-CCF, even what we were doing before CCF started on the Mighty app. And so there's a little bit of conversation and trying to get people in touch and communicating and sharing of information. And Shane kind of started a lot of that. So I'll throw it to Shane and you can tell us about that.
Okay, thanks, Whitney. So the Dean Brewer stuff originally happened that we all found out about that was March of
Mhm.
2023. And there was then a period of time where the website Wings, which had been around for decades, I don't know if at least like 15 years, I think, or more. And there was people, I don't know how we got connected on there, but people started like posting some information and there was like comment sections. And so this was, probably from like April into May, and information was going up and people started kind of talking about like the abuse and all the different things and issues with the 2x2 ministry, and people start commenting, and most of it was like anonymous because no one wanted their name to get out there. And eventually got to the point where like people are bantering back and forth, but there wasn't any way of having a conversation. And then someone had put a post up that was just calling out like all this hypocrisy in the ministry and the things that were going on and the cover-ups. And I'd been commenting like anonymously, like, I don't know if it was like dad in Wisconsin or something. And I'm like, why am I hiding? Like, who am I hiding from in this? Like not wanting the workers to find out. So I just put my name out there and I was like, reach out to me. I put my email address on there, like, let's find a way to talk like off this website. And so this would have been in like the end of May, and people just started emailing off there, and it was just random people from mainly around the country, but there were some people that reached out from outside the United States, and we just started emailing back and forth. And so I was like, okay, how do we actually, I'm like, well, let's talk, but I don't know, actually, no, I don't have a tech background. How do I do this? So we just started a Google group. And how, if anyone's used Google Groups, how it lays out, it doesn't really allow for a good conversation back and forth. And so quickly, all these people got on there, and I think there was like 80 people that were on this Google group, and it was a wide swath of people, like I said, from around the country and also ages. And I knew quite a few of these, like I had invited some other people and some people joined. And I think I must have, did I email you, Devin, or how did you originally find out about it?
Yeah, we were texting each other, but then you emailed me the link to the Google group.
And then, yeah, there was a couple of like posts out there, and we started talking, and then within a day or two quickly realized that this wasn't going to work. And then you had reached out, oh, it must have been on the almost the weekend, or like, we could just start a social media platform.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I'll let you take it from here. But I mean, that was like, okay, so then we decided to do this. And I was thinking like, oh, like essentially start a Facebook for people that are in meeting. And I was thinking it was like this huge thing to like build this thing. And it was like, pretty much you can just start plugging information into these, engine, like social media engines, and it just formats it out for you. And so that happened like over a weekend. We're like, okay, we'll do this. And then Sarah and Garrett and you and I got on this, and I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. You knew how to do the thing. So we started moving all the building this site one like Sunday morning. I'm on like an airplane flying somewhere, and we're like, we're going to launch this site.
You texted me right before meeting. I
Yeah.
was home and he's like, "Hey, check out this website." And I pulled it up and it said, like, "We're connected and concerned friends. If you join today, you'll get a free Bible study course." And I was like, "What?
And it was
What
like,
are you
it
doing
was like
here?"
an AI, like it generated
yeah.
a decent amount of stuff right away.
Yeah.
Right. And so we like, this website was built over, I don't know, like a handful of hours. And then we like took people's email address, sent out invites, and then all these people started streaming on, and we're like adding features and kind of editing it as we go. So I'll kind of let you take over, Devin.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, Shane. And I think just like all of us, we have a story that drove us to take on the massive workload by so many people. And you're dealing with this workload, but you're also dealing with this massive emotional distress, right? These like tectonic plates within people's foundation are completely shifting. And my background has been in technology. I started a few, high growth tech companies, and so I knew how to do this. And what we experienced, actually, even more so than in any for-profit thing I'd ever been involved in, was we were hyper growing way quicker than I'd ever seen anything. And so what that was
Hmm.
saying was, as we put this platform together, we then mobile optimized it. We basically, I remember we got Whitney's friend to like make the logo, and she like just did it. And we're like, okay, that's the new
Yeah.
logo. It's like on two ends, like wrap it up, like go, like so everybody that was like pouring out contributions to help, because the connectedness was, we were all talking in pockets. And what drove me to like really want to do it was obviously went to meetings. I wasn't winning like professing man of the year awards or anything, but I was like, I have this background and drive. Is this something that I can, really, really help with? Because the previous time we had a meeting with our elders and like our senior workers and everything, and the end result of that was, here's a piece of paper and you can go look up how to like take that one test, like if you're in the ministry safe. And I was like, wait, this is
Mhm.
the end result of all this? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, no, I was like, we were trying to get them to help us. And they're like, no, we don't think that makes sense. We just think that, everything should basically be put back in the ministry's hands. And then I was like, oh, do they really think that I'm just going to do that? And, we've always been taught to like, kind of respect the workers and stuff. And I just have a background to like engage in conflict, and not have a problem with kind of going against that. And so when we put all of this together, we started pulling all the data where all these people were coming from. We started pulling all the regions. Then we could see who was becoming most active. And then we would outreach to them, and we created this thing called a moderator. There were people called hosts. And so Shane and I were the first like hosts, and we're like, we cannot do all this by ourselves. And so we made Garrett, Sarah, and then others hosts, which had the kind of omniscient access to like turn people off and add somebody and so forth. But as this thing was exploding, we needed to put in parameters to make it like a truly intimate community. So we put in parameters like you had to be approved. And we like checked these names, and we're like, yeah, these are these people. And then they like usually had to put a sentence about themselves. And then it was growing even more, but we put even more standards. I think I can remember the day Shane and I, and by the way, if you ever want to do anything, you should do it with Shane, because he puts 170% into it. I've never had somebody, I've never had like that was scary. Like, yes. And thankfully we had Whitney to control us. But like, he's like, we're gonna require everyone to put their picture up. And I was like, yeah, I think this is a great idea. We asked like some other people, they're like, this is a horrible idea. Like, so as we were growing, we were putting in all these practices that created tons more friction. So, like, I remember when people would send in, that's like, hey, I'm under a fake name because I've also endured abuse. We had to send that to like
Mhm.
hosts and other moderators that we were bringing on, be like, what do we do here? And so, like, my background was kind of like trying to put in structure so that we can't just like one off be like, oh, we'll do that for this person, but not this person. What the opposite person? And so, what really happened from that is, the same tenets that you used to create a company, we created this like team that, I would go to war with that team any day. And it created this such closeness that everybody's voice was heard, and you got to see the best brought out. But it also took so much out of people, and we really ran it to standards. Like, not, we weren't creating a website, we were creating an entire organization. And obviously today CCF is the 501c3 nonprofit, thanks to Whitney and her amazing team that's taken it, from kind of the founding to where it is. It was built as an organization from the start, and as part of that, that also meant that certain people that had lots of passion, that wanted to do things that were one-offs and weren't part of building an organization, they had to be removed. And then that came with a lot of
Hmm.
conflict. And so,
Hmm.
while all this is happening, while at the same time people are having all these revelations about something that they put their heart and soul into, and it wasn't just like, oh, you went to church. This was our DNA. And so, like, I have a lot of pride and a lot of PTSD from
Hmm.
doing that. But I'm so privileged to get to have done that and experienced that with you guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that's amazing that you guys have brought up that brings back so many memories of those first few days and first few weeks is like Shane talking about we were wanting to create something that wasn't anonymous. We want people to use their names, show up as themselves, be brave and speak words that were true. And then Devon's talking about people with fake accounts, and we're trying to vet people, and we're trying to make sure that we had quite frankly a lot of issue with especially workers trying to create fake accounts that they were trying to see what's going on, but they don't want the accountability of showing up behind their name. We were trying to vet people, we were trying to figure that out. At the same time, we're realizing that, okay, we need a code of conduct here. Like, we didn't have things plugged and played before we created this. We were creating this on the fly. We were building the airplane as we're in the air. And we're saying, okay, now we need a code of conduct. What are our standards? What are our values? What do we want this to look like? And so as a team, we're going back and forth like, well, we think this is important. We think this is important. And we're putting this document together as we are having comments streaming in that were vile, negative, violent. Like, we're dealing with a lot of moderation issues straight off the bat. And we were as a team online a lot. And Shane and Devon and Garrett and all of the rest, we were spending hours a day trying to make this thing work. And I think one thing that especially shows that is I remember learning that Garrett would get up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., just to check and make sure the thing wasn't burning down. And that was all of us
Yeah.
trying to make sure there was some level of civility in this conversation, because we thought the conversation was so important. It needed to happen. People needed to be connected and be able to communicate with one another. And yet, the entire community, none of us had skills of how to talk about these things. And so we're trying to build that on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And kind of like what Devin said, this going to meeting was like everyone's life. Like, I mean, you know everyone's last name, like, you're related to how many people. And I think going into this, right, the reason it was like, okay, we need to find a way to like talk and try to fix things, which that was kind of like, CCF and getting the ministry to change. At that
Mm-hmm.
time, we thought like, well, this is going to meetings like the best way to serve God, right? And so the option of just
Mm-hmm.
being like, well, whatever, I don't like what the ministry is doing, let's just go find another church. Well, we'd all been taught like every other church is wrong and evil, and that's of the world. So there was this, people just come streaming on and they're sharing all their experiences, and then they're wanting to find like, let's go to the Bible, or what does the Bible say on this? Let's fix this to make this right. So it wasn't just like, people coming and being like, I have this shared interest. It was our life, our families, like Devin said, 5 generations. Most of us were, I mean, sometimes people, someone's parent met, meetings, but a lot of us have ties that go back into the early 1900s. So it was like all we knew, and it was in our DNA, as he said. And so all those people come streaming on, and there was just like so much passion from people that were 70, 80 years old, and people sharing stories. And I think, like you said, trying to do this for posterity, if someone 10 years from now comes back and is just learning about stuff, is that there was, prior to this, like, we were always told stay off the internet, right? And so other than like a worker sending an email saying this is what's going on in the field, this is where gospel meeting is on Sunday, there wasn't any way to talk. It was just like through the grapevine of, you knew someone's family, you called someone up, you texted someone. So there was no way for people to talk about issues that were going on. And once this was actually built and people connected, you learned the same crap that was going on in Wisconsin was the same crap that was going on in California, which was the same stuff that was going on in Ireland. And you quickly realize like, oh, we're not alone. And even if there was people that didn't want to talk about it, like we found in Wisconsin, like we had a bunch of, I mean, the prison ministry with like, protecting child abusers. And there was, people from our meeting that we had left, no one's talked to us since then. but there was people that wanted to talk and
Mhm.
spread out, and you realized like, okay, I'm not alone. Like maybe there's no one around here that wants to talk, but you know, when I'm talking to, Sam down south, and he's an elder and he's in his, 60s, like he's feeling the same way I am. Like, okay, this abuse is bad, but why do the workers do this? Why do they go two by two? Why is there no transparency in money? And I've seen the worker be like, I carry around $30,000, and all these crazy stories. So it all connected. And then there was the part of just like the worst part was just hearing all the abuse and how it had destroyed people's lives and the cover ups that went on. And that was like the hardest part because it was just all ages, people that were even in their 80s, 90s that that were abused, knew of abuse. And those were like the hardest things to deal with. And like you said, going back to the anonymous things, people don't want to put their names out there. They didn't want to have family members see that they were on this because, as we all know, it's like when you leave this, you just kind of are disowned in a lot of families and circles.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, we had workers come on and then create fake account, and then one worker like sent an email to me saying I needed to ban a certain member, but the worker lied about who he was, and I figured out who it was. It was Leslie Pulley. I figured out who it was, and remember that? Remember that? I was like,
Yeah, I remember
no,
that.
Yep.
I was like, your IP address says you're Leslie Pulley. He's like, what? No, oh no. And then he like came with another story. He's like,
Yeah,
oh no, my account got hacked. Yahoo's been getting hacked lately. I was like, dude,
yeah,
you are digging yourself a hole. And then the next day he sent like an apology note, like, I hope you won't tell anybody, da, da, da. And I was like, I'm not, that wasn't what I was going to do, but I was like, these are humans. They're going through,
mhm,
whether they're digging in deeper or they're like thinking like, what am I going to do outside of the work? But one of the great things about the name of like connected was that it wasn't just what we built and the mobile optimized and how we would track all the impressions and all stuff, is that we created all these Zoom meetings. So like we would
Mhm.
start Zoom meetings that we would only have certain amount of accounts. And we would then start one for Australia. And then we would go, oh, like I remember Shane telling me, he's like, oh, we've officially landed in Slovakia or something. I can't remember the name. But it was
mhm,
like, what, how did we get there? I was like, and so what that did was the connected, just like Shane said, it wasn't just about the app. I will say we have also gotten a couple married that met on CCF, and I was invited to the
oh,
wedding as well, which I'm still a little upset about. However,
mhm,
it created this like incredible amount of like feeling that you weren't just on a site, you were part of that same community. Like, because we all know there was just so many
Mhm.
unspoken things when you were around the friends. You knew they understood you and you understood them, and we made people
Mhm.
feel that even though they were going something that was completely against the grain of what they've been taught. And so I just remember like we were running out of seat licenses, we're running out of seat license, so we need to buy unlimited licenses, we need to set up another one that does this, who's controlling this account, like, hey, no one can step on to, I mean, we would all be different places. I remember one time I was at the zoo and Shane's like, hey, can you start that Zoom? And I'm like, hold on a second. And so everybody, CCF became the DNA of our day-to-day lives. Even today, like not because I take any credit for it, but I'm just so proud to see like the people that
Yeah.
have also developed. We had people that might have been homemakers or something before, and now here they are leading what I still think today is the largest platform, certainly in ours. And in the beginning, when we created it, this wasn't AI. We actually wrote the documents in it. I think it still exists unless it's been changed. It said like to
Mhm.
create like an everlasting platform, because Shane and I would look at it and we're like, Wings has been around for a long time and now the volume of impressions is spiking. But all that's doing is like no one's believing like what's hearsay. We need to create something that really will stand the test of time. So that's where all those practices and all those things came from. And that's why it gets to exist today. Is we want it to be an everlasting platform versus the point of where somebody just has the same narrative 10 years from now and be like, "Don't get on the internet, like don't get on CCF."
Mhm.
Like, why? Like, get on there and you can see that I'm certain there are people that still go to meetings that are on CCF, and there are people that
Mhm.
and it was never set up to. I know we did surveys, but it was never set up to try to create division. It was never set up to try to create you're right, I'm wrong, because maybe Whitney's on the 2 month plan of recognizing this. Shane is on the 2 day plan, and Devon's on the three. I remember. I know that sounds crazy, but like I was the last person to stop going to meetings in my family. Like I was the last one. I like
Mhm.
and so like we really created it to be a home for everyone, and I think still today that's what it is. And I know
Hmm.
that it does not require near as much moderating, but that's because of the foundation that all of the people that helped build this put in place to do so. Now I think it's a place where people can talk about even just spiritual things that may have nothing to do, again, with some of the abuse and things that happen, and just connect a community that we never had before.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget that before CCF existed, a lot of this nobody thought could be done. I remember having a phone call, like, I don't know, the first week that we had this created, and this person was literally like telling me it is absolute bonkers and insane that you're trying to have people that go to meeting, people that have left decades ago, and people that are like somewhere in between on the same platform. And you're trying to have them talk to each other, and they said this code of conduct will never work. And I was just like, well, we got to try. We have to try, because we can't just, we're talking with the people that think like us, and they're talking with the people that think like them. CCF was created to have people talking and sharing information with each other, and it was insane. It was hard. I remember when we were trying to set up an account with Lyle Schober in Texas. We're like, we want him on the platform, we want him to be talking to people, and we invited them and we tried to make it possible. And there were a lot of workers on CCF, and there still are. But the idea, the goal to have this link of communication between the ministry and all of the members of the church wasn't as successful as we hoped it would be, because we were hoping that the workers would engage with us. And what we found mostly was that they would just read and they wouldn't talk and they wouldn't comment. And I'm sure there are a lot of reasons and valid reasons they felt intimidated with that. But we did host a lot of Devon Talks About Zooms. We hosted worker Q&As. We hosted Zooms with workers to try to bridge those gaps. And Shane knows better than the rest of us, and maybe you'll talk about it, Shane, of all the outreach we did to try to get workers involved, to try to make it a place where they felt comfortable sharing. And ultimately that wasn't as successful as we hoped. But maybe, Shane, maybe you could talk a little bit about all the work you did trying to make those relationships.
Yeah. So right away, it was once we had a few hundred people on. I mean, it didn't take more than a couple of days, and there was like 400 or 500 people on there. And some of the workers had begun to hear about it. And at some point that first week, I ended up like getting on a three-way call with a worker and another one of the friends at the time that was like apparently working with the ministry and other channels. But like everything was so secretive, right? Which it's how it's always been with the 2x2s, where there's no transparency with there's no policy, there's no transparency with money, there's no the friends could never question the workers even on the Bible. Like they didn't want any of that, right? It was like they were the authority. So the second it seemed like, oh my goodness, like there's some movement spreading that's a threat to the ministry or causing disruption to how we normally do things since 1896 or whenever William Irvine decided to start this, it was, well, we need to get a hold of this. And so that's where, we reached out to try to get workers. Because at the time, right, I thought like the 2x2 ministry was how it's supposed to go. I mean, I don't think that now. I think
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing is, demonic, but that's another conversation. And me and Nicole did do a podcast out there. So if you want to kind of hear our own spiritual journey and where it led us to, you can dig into that. But um, we tried to like say, hey, let's get some workers from different areas and we can get a policy, we can get them to start listening. And it very quickly became like they didn't want the friends having any role. Most times they wouldn't even respond over email. It would have to be like these weird back channels. Or I know there was like a worker in Minnesota that we'd emailed, like that was Dean, I think, right? And like he had kind of responded and seemed like they wanted to change. But most of the time, like they always said they had to report to someone else, which I think they probably did. But I think deep down they didn't want to probably cause any disruption and make waves, right? I mean, most of these people were years in the ministry. If they got kicked out, like they're going to be living in their parents' basement. So it was like a threat to their whole life, which I understand. They're trying to survive.
Mhm.
So we tried. I mean, I remember doing like mass emails to workers. Like I think it was Jen had sent me a list. She's like, "Can you send this email out?" And I was like, it was like hundreds of emails. I'm like typing in onto this thing to send out, and no one. It was from like we made this neutral email address, like concerned and connected friends at gmail.com, and not one worker ever responded back. Right? It was just like they're not going to do that. So it was like overall silence. Now I'm sure out there was some friends that were talking to some workers, but there wasn't any sort of collaboration. And there was at times talk of like different states that were trying to get policies. And then I remember that like meeting at Seneca where it was like, all these workers coming on Seneca and we are trying to get information. And then I think we had emailed to like, can we attend and like have some representation? Like no one even listened to us, right? And like Devon said, like I
Yeah.
wasn't a big person in meeting. Like no one was ever. I had a TV in my house. We had a Christmas tree. Like we jumped through some of the hoops, but we were not like valued
Model.
friends. We didn't give much money to the workers because I didn't know where it was going. So we were not modeled friends. No one was going to be concerned like, oh, these are big people in the 2x2s. They're going to listen to us. So, I maybe that was some of it, but I know there was other people that were big parts of the elders that were concerned, but the workers didn't listen to them either. Maybe for a bit. So everything was just so secretive, which it's like once you actually get
Mhm.
into, you talk about any corporation or like the church where we go, like everything's transparent, like money's on the sheet and where the giving goes. And if you have a question, you'd go like about anything a pastor says, like you'd be like, come talk to me, they want you to ask questions. Like this is just normal in every other, worldly church out there, but everything was just secretive. And so I think, we're always like, well, that's how it's always been. But it started to be one of those things like, okay, why is this so secretive? And as more of us started to ask
Mhm.
questions, and I think, look at scripture, read our Bibles, it was like, and talk to other people that had left the 2x2s, which CCF did a good job of connecting. I'm sure some of those people are still on that had left 20 years ago. And you're like, these people come on, and now those are the people that we looked at. Oh, those are the crazy Jesus people. Like, well, they were the people reading their Bibles and they left for doctrine reasons decades ago because they saw that it was, you know, the system was
Mhm.
false. So yeah, it just was trying to fight and not get anywhere. And we were trying so hard because we thought there was something worth saving when the only thing we're saving was helping the people, right? It wasn't worth saving any of the
Mhm.
form of the meetings or conventions or any of that. That was just, but we all had to learn that. And as Devon said, we all got there,
Mhm.
at different times. And like you said, there's still people in our lives that maybe aren't on CCF, and our people aren't on CCF that are, like I had a cousin that reached out and she just started reading stuff earlier in the year and she got to where like we are. And she's like, oh my goodness, like I realized the doctrine was false and I need to separate from this. So everyone's on that when they open their eyes to it. But yeah, it was just
Mhm.
amazing how secret it was. And it like, this is something necessarily I'm proud of, but I'm a pretty honest person. But at one point I got frustrated with the workers not responding. So I'm like, well, do they even check these emails? So I made a fake email address and I sent out, I just said had a nephew or a niece or someone that was moving to their area. And so I changed it based on what overseer I sent it to and said, they're moving there. They used to go to meetings, but now they're divorced. Will they be able to take part? I'm like, can you just, talk a little bit about what your policy is on like divorce and remarriage and all that stuff. I sent that out to, I think, 8 different people within Canada and the United States to overseers. And I think I had 4 or 5 responses back within about 24 hours. And some were back within 2 hours. No one would put any information out there as far as their policy, but they wanted information like their phone number. Someone even just sent me a worker's picture, a list, everything right away. I mean, they were just like, they saw an opportunity to get a hold of someone and get them to come to meetings. So that showed me that, yeah, workers were reading their emails. They were just completely ignoring everything that we did. So,
But going back to the Zoom
Mhm.
calls, like one of the things that, because I wasn't involved that much, I was just a support for him. But like the amount of Zoom calls he was on in the very beginning, like we went to convention in Colorado and he left at some point to go to a cafe in town so he could start one of these Zoom calls. Like it was, I mean, it was just like crazy the amount of time he put into it. But also, one of the Zoom calls, because you started doing like regional Zoom calls, right? Like once a week, each region would have a
Yeah.
Zoom call.
Well, because at first it was just everyone pouring onto the site. So imagine you have like 1,000 people, but they're in all different parts of the country or the world, and there was like a main chat board. Well, it was like, if you were on at 7 in the morning, and then you'd comment, but you'd come back like at 5 o'clock at night. Well, the chat had moved along, so there wasn't any way to like read the chat. And then but people would put posts and you could comment on it. But eventually we decided, okay, let's divide it up into regions. So it was like Wisconsin, like we divided it based on like how workers, have fields and all that stuff. So then people could go to those chat groups and you could chat with just Minnesota, Wisconsin. And then we did Zooms off that because it was like, yeah, people were chatting, but like if we're actually going to try to go for change and policy, let's create a Zoom meeting at 2 o'clock or 6 o'clock PM on a Tuesday night. And like some of these would have 40, 50, 60 people. We even hosted like,
But one of those had our overseer on it.
oh
Remember?
yeah,
And so people were asking questions
and he didn't
of
respond.
overseer, and he literally just sat there with his mic muted, and people were saying, Glenn, what do you think about that? And he just sat there for an hour and a half. We had that Zoom call, I think. And
Yeah.
that spoke volumes because it was like he's literally being addressed in the Zoom call and he's choosing to just remain silent. I don't know how he managed to do that because it was like 10 people.
And it was everything I ever saw done on CCF and a Zoom. It was very much done and like there wasn't yelling, shouting.
No.
People were like very respectful, even when they were frustrated with like a worker in a Zoom call and they weren't answering. And it wasn't like we were at that point calling out like their way of life or your doctrine or this is what you believe. We were just like, there's this abuse going on. Like,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? Can you just put together a policy? Like, kids are going to go to this meeting and this guy's a known perpetrator that got out of prison 2 months ago and people are uncomfortable. And it was just met with silence. So it was like basic at that point, just even basic human decency of like, can you help us? Like, we want to keep attending this, but we don't feel safe. And they wouldn't commit to anything. They wouldn't put any kind of policy in. And I know you had interviewed Steve Cluse the other week, and right, I mean, they came up with that whole thing. And I know like Minnesota, I think eventually put in some kind of any place that ever put in any policy, no one ever actually followed it. I don't think to the degree that people wanted. There might have been various, aspects that were followed, but there wasn't really any way to enforce or checks and balances or non-ministry members that could really be involved. I don't remember Washington got a little farther. But yeah, it quickly became like where we were, it was like, no, they don't need a policy, but none of the, now there's more people that have left meetings, but for the most part in Wisconsin, it was like people didn't want, why do we need changes? Like the workers are, on the same level as Jesus is. So like they're Jesus like, so we'll just trust them in all things, And so it's like, okay, if enough of the people don't want change, the ministry's not going to change when they'd have to be completely changed around transparency and open what's going on to everyone out there.
Yeah, and I do think like that was the problem, is the response was so unsophisticated. It was like, wait, if you like, even if you were like trying to like placate people, you would have responded in some slight different, like, okay, guys, we're gonna have a session. I think they did these in Texas, by the way. I think there was a worker that did them, and I believe they were pretty fruitful. I can't remember his name, but like, why wouldn't you do a listening tour? It was as if there are literally just a few people that control what everybody can do in the ministry. And that's what it eventually boiled up to, right? Is that we talk about that there was no structure, and but yet there was so much structure. It was like this is like the executive branch and the legislative. I mean, this might as well have been like a pyramid, right? And so I think that's what we had, there's some very successful friends, very intelligent friends, and very like smart people that were in two by twos. And then eventually we had to all like kind of look at each other and be like, if we keep thinking this person's the idiot because they're not changing, no, we're the idiot because we're not changing. And so those are kind of the revelations that actually start to happen. We're like, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad. It's like, no, but you're still doing it. Like, and so now we use the platform as like kind of a unified. I don't know how many has now, but I do remember that Whitney did let me approve the 5,000th member. That was very kind of her. So it's
Yep.
going to be over 5,000. And just imagine how many people those people affected. We had a lot of shared accounts, right? Like husband and wives. And then we had a lot of people that were on accounts but didn't want to be. I mean, I got to believe, I don't know what the statistic was. Maybe it was like 70,000 friends or something of that nature at one time. I can't understand like how CCF has now not permeated to
Mhm.
30, 40,000, 50,000 people. And I think that's the great part about the platform. All the work that everybody put in is that it can exist for if you want to know everything and you choose to make a deliberate decision to go to meeting, that's okay. Like I don't actually like have anything against people. The point simply being is like if you are aware of the information doctrinally and otherwise, and you choose to, what we learned really quickly was a lot of people maybe didn't go to meetings just for the doctors. It went because of their small community or their specific meeting or their specific elder and some other things. That I'm not saying that's why you should remain, but it opened up our eyes to how integrated it was as part of our life. And what was so crazy is that the response overall, there were good pockets. And by the way, there were so many good workers too. Many of them left. And I think it's like probably an incredible thing when you got to see like God's real hand in that. Some of these workers, like several in our field that left, they were in there for 30 years, and then through the help of other people and some of those people that might have been ex-friends, now they're physician assistants. Now they're like doing something that was the next part of their life. And I know CCF was the thing that also helped them be that impactful and realize that and be connected to that. And so I don't know what the numbers are now. I obviously always cared about the numbers of CCF. I would drive that home a lot. Uh, but
Mm.
but I do know that it is amazing how many people it has touched and how many people have made changes and how many people, even if they still go to meeting, they have made mental changes. I do not think you just get to operate the same way as you did before. Like it exists in a way that I think will eventually help everyone. But I think it has helped the vast majority at least know the information and in their heart know when they make a decision that they can be embraced by a community either way.
hmm Yeah, I think the thing that was so interesting is when we started, like Shane was talking about, for all of us, the idea was to change the church and to, force change on the ministry and to say, we have a stake in this church. And then we realized that CCF did help change a lot, and it changed us. It changed me. It changed my perspective, access to information, access to community, access to resources gave me what I needed to change. And so, as much as it didn't change what I thought it would change, it changed for the better in my life. And I think that's what we've seen across the board is especially with the vision of how are we going to run this platform, it went from change the church to provide resources, community, information, advocacy for the people that need it. And so it became much more community driven than simply just a one goal of changing the church. And I think that has been a lot more satisfying than I ever thought it would be, is to see that outcome. Essentially, failure of our initial goal has actually
Yeah.
been really
Yeah.
satisfying.
Yeah. I mean, it's while I was in it in 2023, I couldn't see like how God's hand was like fully in CCF, but like looking back and seeing all the, different people he raised up and used, it wasn't necessarily people that you would have thought, but he used it to bring glory to him and to bring people into a relationship with him. And so like in each other. So it's like I can see that now and he like, changed people's hearts. And like some of us, me and Nicole kind of go back and forth and we're always like, how did we not see this stuff earlier? And when you taught, like we remember different parts and we actually learned from being on CCF, like there was the, Alberta disruption in like the 90s where there was like, the workers doing terrible things and destroying people's lives and money and oil fields. And we met a lot of those people and kind of got that story from CCF. And there was stuff published on the internet. And I remember there was like, we called it a falling away of people in Iowa, and we never knew what was going on. And I connected with some of those people in it because it was people that were like in college or a little older than me. It was like, what actually happened? It was like they started questioning the workers on William Irvine, and they left all for doctrinal reasons. And so when you look, you see there was pockets of people. There was books that were written, like The Secret Sect was burned, right? And like Cherie Kropp was someone that, like, it's amazing how God used her to like just compile all this information, and her book just happens to be published in 2023. Like, I don't think that's by accident, right? It was like, and that was a book that so many people read and actually had all the history in there. And I just, there's people that were on CCF, they're there from the beginning, but like just to say thank you to all the different people. I'll miss people if I start saying names, but people that were there for a little bit, months. Some people were days, weeks. It got to be a lot because some people couldn't handle, like, it just got to be stressful, or they were trying to deal with family. So like God used a lot of people, and people, as Devon said, like so many different talents. Like people at IT, some people were writers, some people were therapists. Like we started groups in there where like workers could talk among each other support groups. And so there was therapists that were put in there. I mean, like Heidi did so much stuff. It was truly amazing, and it did help, and I think healed a lot of people that we learned were, had so much trauma from this, and hopefully, help them through this. So many people that, like I said,
Yeah, it made it even beyond our church, right? I remember we're watching like the Super Bowl, and I see an ad for Nightline that said "Secrets of the 2x2 Church." I was like,
yeah.
"This is
Oh no.
at the Super Bowl of my most proud and shamed moment ever." I was like, and I was like, I mean, the FBI investigation, all these things. This is not like it. CCF helped shape how the world could be aware, but also that I think by virtue of that, I think we all went through this when we were kids, right? We were always like, kind of like, didn't want to talk about where we went to church and stuff. Like we're like kind of like, oh, it's in a house. Like, oh, okay. Anyways, let's get back to this. But what this actually did is, I think, because it became prime time, it opened up conversations to like have with people outside the church. And I was always shocked when I was like tell somebody about this, and they're like, "Oh, okay, so that's kind of like this, and this." And I was like, "No, no, 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 it's totally different." And they're like, "No, it's just like that." I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, we're
Mhm,
not that special." And what also happened was
mhm.
like all of a sudden we weren't that weird, and we weren't that special. And what I mean by that is like almost all of these religions have gone through something like this. And the worst part is when you stick your head in the sand and don't do anything about it. And that was what we were being told to do. And I'm just so glad that there was just an army of warriors, like Shane said, that had completely different talents that did not do that. And we were on the BBC, Shane and I, Vice Media. We did an interview, Vice Media. I mean, this is on Nightline. It's like, so I think what it really helped bring is like even the most staunch people, like my grandmother or something else, like was like big because of so many things that people did because they felt empowered by CCF and it existed.
Yeah. And there were so many people, like I'm glad that Shane and Devon, you brought up all the warriors and all the people that made this possible, which are innumerable. Our team has been huge since the beginning. So many people coming in and out, sharing their skills. But like Shane mentioned earlier, with Wings and Advocates for the Truth and Voices and all of these different organizations putting pressure, it has changed a lot, even though the ultimate goal of changing the church hasn't been successful. I'm so grateful for everyone's time. And since I've got you on the line, I'm so grateful, Shane, for the amount of time you put in, and for Nicole for the amount of support and wisdom and help you guys have been. And Devon, like we said, you said about being willing to go through war for this team. Like I feel like there was a lot of trauma bonding, and we all became really close because we were fighting for what we felt was justice and righteous and a good cause. And I'm glad for those that we've helped, and I'm glad for the success that we've had in reaching people and connecting people, and that's been pretty cool. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank
Yeah.
you, Whitney, for continuing it. And,
Yeah.
like all the efforts that you guys still put in. I know it's not maybe as wartime as it was before, but it's just as important. And also thank you, because I did just receive my CCF Christmas ornaments, and they were hung up.
Nice.
And I appreciate the craftsmanship.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm still always amazed. Like, yeah, there's people out there that probably will get on CCF or start learning about stuff a year from now, 2 years from now, right? They're like, they weren't paying attention, and then one of their kids leaves, and they all of a sudden are like, why are they leaving? And they start digging around. So, for anyone that's just watching this or watches this in a year or two, like, you're going to go through so many emotions as you learn about stuff and start learning the history and learning all the damage that's been done. But like, there's hope on the other side. It's amazing what like God's done for me and Nicole, and there's healing. And while it seems terrible when you're in it, because I remember we were just like, at some point, that summer of CCF, like, literally I was done and she wasn't there, and I'm screaming at her like, I don't want my kids raised in this cult, and she's like, but I don't want to leave this and all this. So it gets better, and we're 2 years out now, and like, so much of the anger has subsided, and I don't like harbor ill will to people that I know are still like workers that have done bad things, keep spiritually abusing people, or friends that are whatever. But we were all deceived. Once you open your eyes, you learn, and you know better, and you can do better. So there's hope out there for someone that's just like, oh my goodness, like, how do I get out of this? Or like, I didn't realize that, this was all going on. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a good point to make, that especially it's maybe easy to feel or to forget when you've moved on, or when you've healed or progressed a bit. It's easy to forget how intense those months are and those years can be. And I think one of the big things is surround yourself with community that supports you, and reach out for resources that can inform you, and find advocacy and find clarity in things that feel right and feel good. And if you need help, certainly there are lots of people to reach out to that are willing to help. And I thank these guys, and you, Nicole, too, for all the work you put in to set up something that will hopefully help generations to come.
Thank you, Whitney. And Whitney, wait, what is the number at now? What is it at
Let me
now?
pull it up. I close my CCF when I do these, so I don't get notifications. So hang on.
I mean, we used to live and die by these numbers every day, every week.
I remember when we hit 4,000, and then I think it's like, it kind of plateaued, because I think like over time people have left, and then other people come on. But I do remember, like, because of the growth, and it was like in your head where, there's a point where when we thought we could like fix this, you're like, everyone's going to want to hear about this. And we were thinking like, we don't know how many people actually went to meetings. There was numbers thrown around. Maybe there's 100,000. We're like, if we get like 20, 30,000 on here. And then you started realizing, you're like, no, like, you go talk to people in your area, and you're like, no, they're never going to join the internet site. But it was still amazing how many people, and the fact that it was people from like all parts of the world, right? I don't know how many countries were represented at one point, but it was a lot of countries, which just showed how interconnected everyone was, and how like something could be shared by one person, like join this website, and then someone comes on there and they join other people. And then I think even right, Australia had started a website, wasn't that kind of after we had, right? Maybe other countries have done it.
But I think they stole our name, and I was like, you can't use our name. If you're going to use our name, you had to be part of CCF.
Yeah, exactly.
So we would have used a little raider tactics on that, but it was fun.
Devon, our tech guy. There are 5,200 members. But like you say, it ebbs and flows, because it'll rise and it'll drop, and it'll be different people raising and dropping. The point being is that we want people to heal and move on. We're not trying to keep people enraged and engaged. Like, it's okay to use CCF as a tool, heal and move on, and it's there for other people. So the obsession isn't with keeping people on the platform, but the total number helped. And of course, that's impossible to to mark and gauge, but that's the goal. But
And hopefully too, like as like other people, maybe they don't want to read anything, but someday when they do, like they're gonna know, like, because everyone knows people that have left, right? Even, and it's like, okay, I can reach out to that person, or I know there's this website, or I can go to Wings. When people are
Yep.
ready or opening their eyes, they can hopefully engage, and it's not hard to find information out on,
Yep.
type 2x2 and you'll find all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So it kind of opened this door, and with the way the internet is and social media, and that people can at least go out there and find information. And there's, like I said, Devon said, there's multiple documentaries and news things that, yeah, it's not hard to find information like when we were kids. And I sound old, but
Right.
yeah.
It's true though. And that
Yeah,
was a
Whitney,
big push that we made. Sorry, go ahead, Shane.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because you were giving us credit, you like did an amazing job, because you were there because we had met with you.
We called you like
Yeah,
was
to
it a
talk
month
about, because you guys have
before?
been trying to work stuff in Minnesota, and had a meeting with the workers. And I still remember one of the workers, and this stuck with me. It was like one of the workers had said, if you want all these changes, you should just go start your own church. And that was pretty much her way of saying, like, if you want all this, leave, right?
Yeah.
And I think you could speak to it, but I mean, I think she was doing it out of like, yeah, some of the stuff you're wanting is right, but it's not going to happen in this, But and then I reached out to you, because I knew you and Brad had dealt with it in that first week, and then you came on and you were really good with
So you've been
writing
there from the
and all
start.
that stuff, and you were there from the start.
And look
So
at what it's become because of your time and effort. And yeah, I want to say thank you to all the like moderators that came on before, because Shane was like, do you think you can do anything? And I was like, I'm raising our 3 kids. Like, I was spiraling from like all the abuse we were hearing and like trying to rally people to get on there. But like, I mean, you guys really trauma bonded with all the moderators. And like, then there was like, oh, someone can't do it anymore because they were just like overloaded and burned out. So then you'd have to like volunteer new people, and they all just rallied together. And the community you guys made in the back room, like, just, it's awesome what everybody, it was like if somebody's having a hard day, like something was coming up, and you guys all just like rallied around each other, and it was, I don't know, it's really awesome.
But it was a whole group of us that all bonded and helped each other, and like people we've kept in touch with. We like went to Arizona and saw people, and you all have this common bond that no one else that wasn't raised in this would understand.
Like people that listen to our podcasts that haven't gone to meetings, and just to be clear, we didn't start a podcast. We were a part of our church's podcast, but we like, they will never understand, but everybody here understands like what it truly was to be a part of this. And so there is that shared like, hey, remember when you'd look at a guy holding all the folding chairs and you're like, that's a guy I want to marry,
exactly.
Like just silly stuff that only we would understand. It's just, I don't know.
So it's cool to just see
there's
the
a common
connections
bond.
people have made. Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah,
that
we
was
just
fun.
look back, there's so many, like, I only know Whitney and Devon. I only know my wife because of going to meetings. So it's like, I look at it as like, okay, this is just part of our history. Like, God had a plan for each one of us, and we can't undo it. We can heal, and we can also, like I said, know better, do better now. And a lot of us have saved our kids from what we went through, what our parents, what our grandparents went through. And so it's cool to come out the other side and just reminisce about things. But just to encourage anyone that's just starting the journey, going through it, like there's hope on the other side. There's healing. There's just stages of grief that everyone goes through.
Yeah, totally. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you. Go Packers. See you guys.
That's right.